Welcome back to the Corporate Governance Program. I'm Amir Qureshi. Now, Sarah, we were talking about succession planning and family-owned businesses. One of the tensions in any business, I suppose, is on the one hand, you're trying to run a business. On the other hand, in a family-owned business, there are family pressures. How do you manage, I suppose, to deal with the two conflicting priorities?
Well, I think to begin with, alhamdulillah, we're quite a united family. So in our case, we have very, very strong communication, and so we have not as yet faced any of those challenges internally within our family. But definitely, looking to the future, you have to put tools, you have to put systems in place that will prevent any kind of, problems in the future. And so definitely when you think about, succession planning, as I'd also attended your course at LUMS on succession planning.
Free plug.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is imperative to organize your business before you can even think about succession planning. And succession planning is not a one-step process. If your business is not organized in a normal situation, it's very difficult to organize succession. In reference to connecting corporate governance with family governance, there are available now tools that European and American families have used to put in place what they call a family constitution, which allows for the family to be governed by a document that is developed by the family, obviously facilitated by a family business consultant. And some of the very important elements that are covered in a family constitution is, number one, what is the role of family directors in a family business? How are family members remunerated in a family business? How can cousins, siblings get employed in the family business? What is the code of ethics for the family within the business? What else? What are the voting rights of family members? How do you structure shareholding? How do you structure ownership? These are all very, very, very important, perhaps questions that need to be clearly defined and answered before you can pass the business from one generation to the next.
The whole idea is that you discuss all the difficult issues, and like any legal contract or legal document that you draw up, you look at all the possibilities and you document them before there's any issues.
Yeah, you actually very clearly define that, because in Pakistan also, generally it does happen that family members enter the business and they're not necessarily the best fit for the job. And so it's unethical to the business then, because the business suffers. So, how do you keep a balance between everything?
And that's where the document comes in. Zibur, we were talking previously about the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. Now, in the United States, they have a board overseeing the auditors, etc. Do you think Pakistan could benefit from such a board to oversee the work of auditors, etc.?
It's important that that the auditing firms, the accounting firms themselves, they have some oversight, just to make sure that they're disciplined, they are performing their duties in the correct fashion. And under the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, there's a quasi-public body formed, which they call a Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, as you mentioned. And this board actually is charged with delivering this duty. And I think that helps to ascertain whether, if they are A grade or XYZ grades, whether they are actually performing their tasks.
Yeah, so it might actually help if we had such a board in Pakistan.
Absolutely.
Keeping in mind what Professor Haroon was saying. Okay, my final question to each of you, just a quick response. Do you think Pakistan needs to improve the level of, I suppose, legislation and the detail that's in the code, or is it more a case of educating and informing and getting people on board as far as good corporate governance is concerned? Zibur, you can go first.
I think it's a combination of both, which means that there is enough legislation that's out there. More needs to be done, and it's an ongoing process because, of course, it's going through an evolution. But what's even more important is that it gets percolated through the corporate sector. As has been mentioned in this program before, there's a lot of family-owned businesses. And if it doesn't get percolated through the entire corporate sector, then we are not maybe fulfilling its right obligations. And secondly, it's also important to understand that the awareness just doesn't need to come at the board levels or at the shareholder levels. It needs to come through the academic institutions. It needs to come through other related stakeholders. So it's an overall awareness that needs to increase as well.
Yes, amongst the people, amongst the younger
Absolutely.
generation. I know, Professor Saab, your university is doing excellent work in terms of educating its students about corporate governance. Sarah, what do you think? Do you think this is going to eventually going to end up with good corporate governance all over Pakistan?
Well, I think Zubair covered a lot of the points. I think what I would just like to add here is, as Dr. Saib had mentioned before, that there is a great challenge to see how to bring about, the evolution of good corporate governance in private family businesses. Because technically speaking, the Securities and Exchange Commission cannot regulate private businesses. So how is that going to happen? I really don't know. But definitely I feel that using the platform through the Pakistan Institute for Corporate Governance in Karachi, now requiring, hopefully in the future, requiring all public listed companies to be certified directors. I think all of these steps, inshallah, in the years to come, will see change. But definitely it will take time. And also I think, as I mentioned earlier, for people from my generation working in their family businesses, they should particularly try and learn and educate themselves on corporate governance, because that's what I had to do. It's not something, as institutions and universities are just beginning to teach corporate governance as part of your business degree, even in the States. And so, it's detrimental that we keep educating ourselves to see how can we take our business and secure our business to take it to the next generation and secure it for the family. So I think that's kind of what my message would be.
And Professor Haroon, you have the privilege of having the last word. What would you like to add?
A major contributor towards our GDP is the informal or the SME sector. They are out of the ambit of this corporate governance initiative. Now, that has to be brought. How that has to be brought within this whole thing, and instead of just now, there are small businesses, and in implementation of these corporate governance regime actually entails costs, and therefore may not be feasible for them. However, creating awareness from top down. When we start off with listed companies and create awareness that it is in their interests. For example, in your case, as you very rightly said, having a well-structured succession planning constitution or document would actually tantamount to saying that that's good corporate governance. Right?
Absolutely.
In it by itself.
That's actually what I wanted to say earlier.
Right.
Also.
That is, for example, in the hospitality business, when you ask a guest to sort of rate how the service was, how the quality of food was, the quality of the room, was it cleaned enough properly, that is good corporate governance. People they talk about the balanced scorecard in the world, and that is actually what it is.
Yes.
And how to bring the informal sector now into this area, and those areas which are like the textile industry I mentioned, how to convince them instead of, you see what happens is that since they borrow money from the banks rather than through raise funds through the stock exchanges, they are highly leveraged. And then what they do is they seek the state banks, some kind of a package to bail them out. And they're always in problems. They should be actually encouraged to seek access to the equity markets to raise funds instead of leveraging big firms. Bringing the informal sector is very important.
That's actually a very good point to finish on, Professor Haroon, because we'll actually be doing a special program on family-owned businesses and what benefits they can actually get from succession planning. But before we go, Sarah,
I think the strategy could be actually reversed. When you talk to family businesses, and actually, if, like, for example, we have attended family business forums in the UK, which are very, very helpful in helping us learn about how other families, such as the Ford family or the Maragupa family, or so many families have structured themselves. And actually, when you go through family business forums, and when you develop documents such as the family constitution, that leads to bringing in better governance standards at a business level. So you begin with the organization of the family and take it down to a business level. So in definitely when we talk about bringing in good corporate governance in institutions, that is a good step. But also if we had family business seminars in Pakistan, in different cities to raise awareness about how families can look to sustain their business through the generations, that can in effect lead to improving governance in their businesses.
Thank you very much for that, Sarah. Well, we're at the end of our time. I'd like to thank you all. Firstly, Zibur, thank you very much for being part of the program.
Thank you.
And Sarah Ashwani, thank you very much. And Professor Haroon, thank you for joining us. I'm Amir Qureshi. I'd like to thank once again our guests for being part of the Corporate Governance Program. I hope you've enjoyed this discussion. We look forward to having you with us next week. Until then, take care.